Good morning, everybody. I'm Darian the Eclectic, and today we're going to be starting a new series about the different plotting methods out there, starting with Save the Cat. So let's dive right into it. All right, so in this new series about different plotting methods, I want to start with Save the Cat. It is one of my favorite plotting methods, and I'm going to do a two-part here, and we're going to do half of Save the Cat and then the other half in another video. And then I'd like to do Hero's Journey. But before I film that next one, I'd like to know if that's the next one you want to see. So drop a comment below and let me know which plotting method you would like explained, and I'll switch it up and I'll do that one for the next video. But let's start with Save the Cat. Now, Save the Cat is really interesting. It started out as a plotting method for screenwriting for movies, and it's been adapted into a plotting method for novels, which just made so much sense. The more cinematic movies that people go to, the more people enjoy that, the more that kind of crosses over into novels, and people want the cinematic effect more and more in those novels. So being able to adapt that over and use that in our writing is going to be very important for reader satisfaction. Now, Save the Cat goes beat by beat and shows you exactly where you want to go as you develop your novel and which scenes you want to incorporate in your novel. Now, when you think about these scenes, think about them in a generalized sense, and you get to fill in the gaps. So this may seem formulaic on the surface, but in reality, what this is just bullet points, and then you expand and grow from there. So let's talk about the first one. The first beat in the Save the Cat method is the opening image. Now, this is where we see the character in their normal life. We see things that have been going, pretty smoothly for them so far, but for whatever reason, maybe they're dissatisfied. They might not be dissatisfied, but we know that something is about to change. We know that whatever their normal is that we're picturing right now, it is not going to be their normal very, very soon. And so what I like to think about with this is, if you've read the Twilight books, seen the Twilight movies, we see Bella Swan show up at this new place. And so interestingly, it almost skips completely over this opening image, but it kind of incorporates it in flashback or in information. And so she's originally from Arizona, very sunny, very bright, and she's moving to Forks, which is all rain, all shadow. And so it's almost like an instant transition. She's already just gotten off the plane and moved into that new world here. So her opening image kind of skips over some of these. And I like to mention that because a lot of times people will get stuck on these bullet points and try to adapt their own vision of what their story should be into this checklist of items that they think have to be in a book, right? But what you should be thinking about is maybe certain bullet points within the Save the Cat, Hero's Journey, whatever other plotting method you're using, maybe they don't quite fit into your story. So I want you to think about Twilight. Whenever you think, I can't really figure out how this fits into my story, is they kind of skipped over the opening image, and yet the opening image is her arrival into that new world. And another thing the opening image does is it's setting the tone, the mood, it's setting up the character and the setting. So we see, as Bella moves into this new place, we're seeing the description, or we're reading about the description of it. We're getting a sense of who she is, this outcast, this misunderstood person who's always felt out of place. We see the tone of her feeling like she has to take care of everyone, and she hasn't really gotten the care she needs as the child in all of these situations. We get the mood of this kind of dark and moody setting and person and everything here. So they do a lot in this opening image here, as we see the character, we see the setting, the tone, and the mood. And it's really important to kind of mush all of that in together and make sure right away the reader's aware of what kind of story this is going to be. Number 2 in the Save the Cat method is the theme stated. Now, the theme, if we're looking at Twilight, is self-restraint, is control for the things that you love, is that battle between saving someone else and saving yourself. There's a few different things going on here, but since this is primarily a love story, a supernatural thriller love story, what we see here in the theme stated is Edward Cullen trying to resist, even though he has this instant attraction, this instant yearning for Bella. And so the theme stated is shown here whenever he is trying to resist and yet cannot resist. And so it comes together when they come together. he has to show restraint and love her without killing her. Now, the theme does not, again, with these different checklists, is they don't necessarily need to be shown in order in the story or even just once. The theme, for example, it's number 2 in the checklist for Save the Cat, but you will iterate this theme throughout the story in many, many different ways. And it doesn't come up right away in the Twilight story. It comes up whenever we see their initial interaction and the tension between them of him trying to resist and telling her, no, go away, and she can't. So, and when we see it again and again and again throughout the story as, they rubber band back and forth between resisting and yearning for each other. So whenever you state your theme throughout, it's not something I would particularly focus on trying to insert into the story in a first draft. This is something that I would write out my first draft, maybe even, my second draft, to make sure I understand what this story is, and then go through and see what themes have kind of emerged and strengthen them throughout as I'm editing. Number 3 in the Save the Cat method is the setup, and this typically encompasses 10 to 12% of the story, and it really is setting the stage before the major conflicts are kind of introduced and start to ramp up. And so we see the characters meeting each other, we see them interacting with each other and with their setting and everything that's going on. We see the individual micro conflicts that they each have within their lives before the major plot conflict arises. And then we get a hint of what the stakes are going to be. So just before we kind of get introduced to the major battle, life and death kind of conflict, we see what's at stake in this story. For Twilight, we see all the people that Bella loves are going to be put in danger. We see that her, yearning for Edward is going to be put in danger. We see Edward being afraid that he's going to kill Bella, this person that he loves, and put his entire family in danger. And, break this fast on human blood, which is a very big deal to their family and all these things. We see the stakes right before we're introduced to the major conflict that puts all of that at stake. Number 4 in the Save the Cat method is the catalyst. So in Twilight, the catalyst is when Bella actually finds out and gets confirmation from Edward that he is in fact a vampire. She already had her suspicions. She's been trying to find out exactly what's going on. She knows something is not quite right. And that catalyst is when she is officially immersed into his world. Her world is completely turned upside down at this point, and she cannot go back. At every point before this, they can break up, stop talking to each other, she can move away, and her life would go on as normal. But at this point, she now has confirmation that there is another side to the world, a supernatural side, and that she is immersed within it. She is in love with the vampire, she is putting herself at risk, but she's an angsty teen and she doesn't care. They're going to be together, and he confirms her suspicions. So now is when the story kicks off, and we see the battle between the two of them as they try to make the relationship work in the midst of more life and death stakes that are yet to come. Number 5 in the Save the Cat method is the debate. Now this one is pretty self-explanatory when it comes to Twilight. Bella has a decision to make. She now knows exactly what Edward is, and she has to decide if she is okay with this, if she wants to immerse herself in his world. And it doesn't take long for this angsty teen who's ruled by her heart to decide it doesn't matter what he is or what he's done. He is the being I want to be with. And really, we see that debate more in Edward, because as much as he yearns for her, he is well aware of the cost of that if he loses control. And so it's again that battle between the two of them as they both struggle and debate on whether they can make this work, whether they should make this work. And that is even put into jeopardy and brought up again and again as the stakes are heightened, new enemies are introduced, and they're put into more and more danger as time goes on. They continue to question whether they should be together as they put each other's lives at risk just to be together. Number 6 in the Save the Cat method is the break into 2. This is where we transition from Act 1 into Act 2. This is where the protagonist accepts whatever the debate is, whatever decision, they go forward with the purpose of the story. In this case, with Twilight, this is when Bella accepts that what Edward is and decides that she wants to be with him. So So this is when she accepts her role in his world, accepts the immersion into the paranormal. And really, this happens very, very quickly in this particular story. And so going back to the beginning where they kind of the stories kind of skips over that, ordinary world moment and straight into the extraordinary world as the opening image. Here we also see a very abbreviated part in this checklist, in this scene requirement, in that he reveals who and what he is in the meadow, and she immediately accepts it. It's one scene together that combines both of those. And notice, again, we're skipping over some things in the checklist. They had the debate, but that debate continues in multiple parts throughout the story, just like the theme did. But the introduction of what's happening, or the confirmation of her suspicions and her acceptance of what the truth is, happens within the same scene. So again, when you're looking at these different checklists, make sure you're not getting too hard, too fast, too focused on the particular order and hitting each and every beat within it, but keep a fluid attitude about what is true for your story and what you're trying to do with it. If you can jot down little things of what it could be, but then it doesn't really fit as you're writing out that first draft, that's okay. Maybe you can make it fit in the editing phase, and maybe you're going to skip over it or make it abbreviated or move it around from the checklist. That's okay, because this is your story and it's your vision, and it shouldn't have to stick with each and every point as you go through. That's going to be too formulaic. You'll restrict yourself too much and you'll get stuck. So with this, we see Bella accepting Edward in all his sparkling glory, and then moving on with the rest of the story. Very quick, very fast, moving on to the next beat. Number 7 in the Save the Cat plotting method is the B story. And because Twilight is inherently a romance, the B story is yet another love interest in the form of Jacob. And so we see Bella and Jacob renewing their relationship as friends, and we see, at least on Jacob's behalf, that relationship growing into more than friendship, and it requires Bella to have to make a choice between Edward and Jacob. So, by the way, what team are you on? Team Edward, Team Jacob? I think I was Team Jacob when I first saw it. But in the B story, we see her having to contend with this other side, her memories, her past self, and it kind of lends to this character development as well, is who she is different now than who she was when she knew Jacob before. And she's having to make a choice here as a character in developing in where she's going to go. Does she want to revert back to who she was in Jacob, or does she want to continue forward in who she could be with Edward? And so in addition to this being another plot point in the Save the Cat method, this is an important point in her character development throughout the story. And we see the conflict as she has to make those decisions and go up against other people's opinions of what her decision should be throughout the story. Number 8 in the Save the Cat method is the meat of the story. This is the fun and games. And so what the fun and games is really is what you are promising the reader on the back blurb jacket copy for the book. It's what are the adventures that they are going to go through as they try to get from beginning to end of the story. In particular, this, for Twilight, what we see is Bella having to make her decisions between Edward and Jacob. We see her having to go up against the danger that is a relationship with both of them, and then trying to make this relationship with the three of them work in a love and friendship way. But we also see the dangers that all of this encompasses in the form of, the attacks that go on and the continuation of her life being put in jeopardy, and her finding out more and more about this paranormal world, and ultimately having to stand and fight within the paranormal world herself as a human and make a decision on if she wants to stay that way or become something more, become something different. And as promised at the beginning of the story, she always feels like the outcast. She always feels like she doesn't belong. And so the promise of that is that she will eventually feel like she does belong. And as she's immersed into this paranormal world and goes up against all these different new monsters, she becomes stronger. She understands herself better, and she makes the decision to sacrifice something huge, her life, her soul, in order to fit into where she believes she belongs. And everything that that encompasses, forsaking her normal life for an extraordinary life and all the dangers that that encompasses. So the fun and games is all the conflict, all the fights, all of the action scenes that go throughout as we get through the book. It's that very exciting part where we're rushing through the pages to see what's going to happen next. The next point in the Save the Cat beat sheet method is the midpoint. And I want to start this in the next video. So we're going to end it here. This is going to be a two-parter. Come back next week to see the second half of this. And let me know what questions you have on the first half of the Save the Cat plotting method down in the comments below. If you're interested in topics like this, please let me know what else you want to see. If you want to see more from me, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you're informed every time I make a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.